history often turns on the smallest of mistakes. The fall of Constantinople may have come down to a single, forgotten gate. On the siege's final day, the Kirkaporta Gate was left unlocked. Ottoman soldiers slipped through, opening the way for the main force. In moments, the city's fate was sealed. Even the mightiest empires can fall to the tiniest oversight. Sometimes, history changes with the quiet click of an unlatched door. By 1453, the Byzantine Empire was a shadow, reduced to Constantinople and a few scattered lands, surrounded by the rising Ottoman tide. The city's population had plummeted, its economy shattered, and its politics torn by religious and internal strife. Once grand palaces and churches crumbled, and abandoned neighborhoods turned to fields. Emperor Constantine V ruled a divided court, torn between seeking Western aid and defending Orthodox tradition. The West, distracted by its own wars, sent only token support, leaving the city isolated. Prophecies of doom haunted the people, who clung to memories of past glory as the Ottoman threat closed in. The city's defenders were few, their resources stretched thin, and unity was undermined by suspicion and old grudges. The world had changed. The Crusader spirit was gone, and Europe's powers looked elsewhere. Constantinople, once the bastion of Christendom, now stood alone, awaiting its fate. The stage was set for a final, desperate stand. Across the strait, a new force was rising. Sultan Mehmed II, just 21, but driven by a singular obsession to conquer Constantinople. For Mehmed, this was destiny, a dream passed down by Ottoman sultans and sanctified by prophecy. He was a brilliant, ruthless innovator, studying history and embracing new technology to achieve his goal. Mehmed's first move, building Rumeli Hisari, the throat-cutter fortress, to choke off aid from the Black Sea, a clear act of war. While constructing his fortress and amassing troops, Mehmed sent false assurances to Emperor Constantine, feigning peaceful intentions. This deception lulled the Byzantines, buying Mehmed time to gather the largest army and the most fearsome weapons of the age. The city's defenders underestimated the young sultan, mistaking his cunning for inexperience. Mehmed's preparations were relentless, every move calculated to isolate and intimidate Constantinople. The siege was not just a test of arms, but of wits and willpower. The fate of empires would soon be decided at the city's ancient gates. Constantinople's greatest shield was its legendary Theodosian walls, a triple line of stone, towers, and moat stretching 4 miles across the land. For centuries, these walls had turned back every invader. Emperor Constantine XV led a small, determined force, Byzantines, citizens, and foreign volunteers, against overwhelming odds. The Genoese commander Giustiniani brought expertise and 700 elite soldiers, reinforcing the city's most vulnerable points. The defenders relied on their walls, Greek fire, and faith, hoping to outlast the siege. But the walls, though mighty, were old and weakened by earthquakes and neglect. Repairs were patchwork, and the empire lacked the resources for full restoration. Worse, the walls were built for medieval siege engines, not the new terror of gunpowder artillery. The defenders braced for a siege unlike any before, trusting in stone and tradition. But the Ottomans brought a weapon that would change warfare forever. The city's greatest strength was about to face its greatest test. Mehmed's secret weapon was the Great Bombard, a colossal cannon forged by the engineer Orban, who'd first offered his services to the Byzantines. Unable to pay, they lost him to Mehmed, who gave Orban unlimited resources. The result, a 27-foot cannon firing 2,200-pound stone balls, requiring hundreds of men and oxen to move. Each thunderous shot shattered stone and spirit alike, shaking the city to its core. the Great Bombard led a massive artillery train, bombarding the walls day and night. The defenders patched breaches with rubble and earth, racing against relentless destruction. The psychological toll was immense. Ancient walls crumbled, and hope with them. Mehmed's artillery was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of a new era, where gunpowder would rule the battlefield. The defenders fought bravely, but the old ways were dying under the roar of bronze and fire. The siege became a battle of attrition, stone against gunpowder, courage against inevitability. The city's fate grew more desperate with every blast. The city's sea walls, especially along the Golden Horn, were vulnerable. But the Byzantines had a secret weapon. A massive iron chain stretched across the harbor's mouth. Supported by floating logs, the chain blocked the Ottoman fleet, keeping the harbor and the city's weakest flank safe. Ottoman ships tried and failed to break through, repelled by Greek fire and determined defenders. The chain's success forced Mehmed to focus on the land walls, turning the siege into a grinding stalemate. Frustration mounted in the Ottoman camp as casualties rose and morale faltered. The chain became a symbol of Byzantine ingenuity and defiance. But Mehmed was not one to accept defeat. He began plotting a solution as audacious as it was unexpected. The stage was set for one of history's most daring maneuvers. Unable to break the chain, Mehmed devised a plan that defied belief. He would move his ships overland. Under cover of darkness, thousands of workers built a greased log road behind Galata, hauling dozens of ships up and over the hills. While the defenders were distracted by a diversionary bombardment, Ottoman ships were dragged into the Golden Horn. At dawn, the Byzantines awoke to find an enemy fleet inside their supposedly secure harbor. The psychological shock was devastating. Their last safe flank was now exposed. Mehmed's fleet in the Golden Horn allowed him to attack on two fronts and build a pontoon bridge for troops and artillery. The defenders, already stretched thin, now faced disaster. Mehmed's audacity and deception had changed the course of the siege. Hope inside the city began to fade. After weeks of bombardment, Mehmed launched his final assault on May 29, 1453. The night before, the city's defenders gathered in Hagia Sophia for one last prayer, while the Ottoman camp prepared for battle. The attack came in waves, first irregulars, then disciplined Anatolian troops, and finally, the elite Janissaries. The defenders fought valiantly, led by Giustiniani, but exhaustion and dwindling numbers took their toll. Disaster struck when Giustiniani was wounded and carried from the walls. Panic spread among the defenders. At that moment, Ottoman soldiers discovered the unlocked Kirkaporta gate and surged into the city. The sight of the enemy flag inside the walls shattered resistance. Panic and chaos followed. The main gates fell, and Janissaries flooded the city. Emperor Constantinople, refusing to flee, died fighting alongside his men. The 1,000-year-old city had fallen. The streets filled with the sounds of conquest and despair. The Byzantine Empire was no more. A new era had begun. The fall of Constantinople ended the Byzantine Empire and sent shockwaves across Europe. For Christendom, it was a catastrophe. The gateway to the west now lay open to the Ottomans. Mehmed II made the city his capital, renaming it Istanbul, and transformed Hagia Sophia into a mosque. The conquest disrupted trade routes, pushing Europeans to seek new paths to the east, sparking the Age of Discovery. Fleeing Byzantine scholars carried ancient knowledge westward, fueling the Renaissance and reshaping European culture. The city's fall marked the end of the Middle Ages and the dawn of a new world. It was a story of courage, ambition, faith, and the power of innovation. The lessons of Constantinople's fall echo through history, reminding us how a single moment can change everything. To understand our present, we must learn from the past. Subscribe for more stories that bring history to life.